Hello, and welcome back to Matter of Fact. I'm your host, Halawi Tebebe. Today's episode is a little different. Instead of focusing on a single story, we're peeking inward, reflecting on 1 year of reporting at the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center. In its first year, the center produced hundreds of stories across 10 counties in southeast Mississippi. Student journalists were at the forefront of that production, reporting on local government, public health, education, and infrastructure, among various other pressing matters. We attended city council meetings, filed public records, conducted media literacy courses, and expanded our outreach efforts, all while balancing the coursework of a full-time academic schedule. This episode explores what the first year looked like for RACJC, what it required, and what it means for the future. About a year ago, the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center began reporting across the 10-county region in southeast Mississippi. The mission was clear: strengthen local journalism and counter misinformation through consistent, community-based reporting. Before we hear from some of the faces behind the center's work, we want to glance back at some of our proudest moments so far here at RACJC. It's been a year of massive growth. We've welcomed 47 students since the center's inception, some of whom attended USM and others consisting of both high school, community college, and university transfer students who have also found their way to the center through their passion for storytelling. Those students didn't just sit on the sidelines. They reported more than 200 stories across 10 counties. Adding on to that, through our partnerships with over 60 media organizations, their work was read and watched across the state and on the national and international levels. With a focus on building trust, we held 14 media literacy trainings where we attempt to bridge the gap between media and its audience. We also launched some pretty big projects this past year, like the Southeast Mississippi Planner, to keep you connected to local events. We even launched our very first podcast, Matter of Fact, which began as a new initiative but has become a center staple, helping amplify the voices behind the stories that matter to our communities. That is so on theme with the center itself, a nonprofit startup that has evolved into a functioning newsroom, one that produces accountable reporting in regions that we like to call news deserts. From local radio features on Supertalk FM all the way to the International Center for Journalists Award in D.C., it sure has been a year of meaningful impact. Joining us first is Nichole Cyprian, director of the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center. She is one of the people who helped launch the center and oversees our vision, partnerships, and outreach. Nichole, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I know it's been a whirlwind of the past 2 weeks trying to get this anniversary week ready. Mm-hmm. But, isn't journalism a whirlwind?
Isn't it, though?
And I just wanted to really pull back the curtain and ask you, around the time when the center launched, what were the primary goals for year one?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, give me the honest, true answer, first time on tape.
Yeah, so, really when we first launched, the primary goal was to launch. Our primary goal was, can we pull this together in enough time and have it launch in a way that we would be proud, that the Scripps Howard Foundation would be proud of it, that Southern Miss would be proud of it. We launched in January of 2025. I started in August of 2024. And so we had to hire all of our staff. We had to bring concepts to life. So the vision that was initially explained in the grant, all of the things that we said we wanted to do within the first year, we had to figure out not only a way to make that happen, but then actually figure out the details, the fine points of, yes, we want this big vision, but how do we make that happen? And we don't have a year to do it. We have a finite number of months. How do we recruit students? How do we market our name? How do we figure out what the concept is to be able to create this content, and then get media partners from around the state to trust us to want to utilize that content and publish and air that content? So really our goal was to just get off the ground. And fortunately, a huge thanks to the team, the staff that we have, we were able to do so and hire great students and be able to take the vision from the grant and be able to put it into practice. And we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
Hey, I couldn't have said it better myself. I wanted to touch on, you said there was that semester before the official launch of the center.
Correct.
And so there was already a positive attitude around journalism at this school, which, I can assume is part of the reason why the school was selected for this center. How was that kind of entering an environment where the attitude around journalism is very student focused and what we're doing is kind of real world centered as well? So how was that kind of finding the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center's place in College Hall at USM?
Yeah, I mean, it was very helpful that everyone was so positive and everyone was so excited about the center. For me, coming in as a professional into an academic environment, that was a great feeling to have because we had to start somewhere. And so there was a lot of trust that, I had to put into the faculty and staff here to be able to understand what they did and how they did it. And there was a lot of trust they had to put into me and ultimately our staff in trusting that, there are going to be some things that might be a little unorthodox that isn't happening in the classrooms, but for them to trust that, okay, but they've been out in the real world. They've been actually hiring our students into newsrooms. We have to trust that what guidance they're saying and what they're giving us will make sense at the end of the day. And I want to kind of clarify something too.
Yes, ma'am.
I was hired in August of 2024, but it's not fair for me to say that nothing was happening before I was hired. Huge credit to Dr. Simpson, huge credit to the Scripps Howard Foundation, and to, everyone here in the School of Media and Communication, because they had been working on this grant for almost 2 years prior to me even coming on board. From Dr. Simpson writing the grant and for them having the vision of what exactly that would look like. We've had to change and adjust things and pivot things as we've gone, as you do with anything that you're starting from the ground up with. But I walked into a plan, and it was my job as director to execute that plan. And in that execution, there was only a finite number of months. But it's not fair for me to allude to a fact that it was just me starting it off.
Right.
Like, there was a whole team here prior to me walking on board. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And that makes sense. And how you said that throughout our time here, we've kind of found our place and kind of been able to work with the professors here and the work that they're doing here. So what benchmarks have you been using, or markers, to measure whether the center is really fulfilling its mission, as we go through our weekly stories and, our weekly schedules? But how do you really take a step back and be like, are we fulfilling that mission that you walked into?
Sure. So, obviously you all as students have your own set of, deadlines and guidelines and expectations. And we have that for ourselves. So myself, my immediate team, Amy Posey, Whitney Arganbright, we have key performance indicators that we have worked on, figured out, like, what are the things for this year's success metrics, if you will. What are the things going into 2026 that we want to grow and improve? Our 2025 metrics were a little all over the place, only because, again, you're starting from the ground up, so you don't really know what you're comparing yourself to yet. You don't really know how you're going to grow, what you're going to see, where those needs are going to be, where you're going to be more successful and not successful, and how you don't really know those things yet. And so heading into 2026, this has really been the first time that we've been able to take a look back and say, okay, here's what we did in 2025. We knew that we wanted to launch our What is True initiative. We didn't necessarily know that we were going to have 30 What is True investigations and fact checks. We didn't know that we were going to have, 14 different certification trainings that we were going to do. Now that we know that we were capable of doing that in the first year, what can year 2 look like? What can we now set that bar to and try to either surpass it, or at least get close enough to it to where we're like, okay, we know where we need to be, how to challenge ourselves. It's not easy. We don't do that alone. Dr. Simpson and the school are very intricate in that, as well as Mike Cannon with the Scripps Howard Foundation, who's kind of like the liaison between the foundation and us. We all work together to put those key performance indicators together. and to make sure that we're marking ourselves for success and not trying to take on too much, because again, this is only our now our second year. So we don't want to bite off too much that we can chew, but we do want to challenge ourselves to grow and get better every year.
That was beautifully said. So we talked about the ways we can really assess this past year of the center to look forward to year 2 and see what we can improve. So can you describe a moment from this past year where you really saw the center's impact clearly or in motion?
Ooh, that's a good question, because there have been a few. There's one that's currently happening right now that I don't want to speak too much on, just because it's in the process of going on, and there's ethics commission and legislature, and there's a lot that's happening. But I will say, in terms of the content, the storytelling, and the impact that we're having in the communities, I will say the story about gentlemen down in George County with Neuralink was a story that had tremendous impact, not only amongst that particular community, but we really saw the connection and the collaboration that we can have with a media partner. We saw how we can have collaborations with national entities because that story went viral. We saw how people responded to that particular story. Those who had never heard of the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center now knew who we were, shared that story, and there were so many people who then wanted to follow us on Nextdoor or who wanted to sign up for our newsletter. I will say that particular story was a visual representation in terms of just the growth and in terms of people saying, I see you. I see what you're trying to do. I like this story. I'm willing to give you more chances to be able to tell me more stories that are happening in my community.
And I see, because even before I came to the center, and I, speaking of research and speaking of doing my due diligence, that was one of the stories that stood out to me before I ever actually was a part of the newsroom that made it happen. So it's a testament to how far a story can go when community accountability is behind it.
Yeah, and also just what building relationships, the importance of building relationships. That story came from one of our media partners down in Loosedale. Shout out to the George County Times. And they let us know, hey, this is what's going on. This might be something that you're interested in. And so we worked with them to be able to get in touch with this gentleman down there and be able to tell his story. And I don't believe that he was responding really to any other media outlets, and that's understandable. It's very overwhelming given what he was going through. It was extremely overwhelming to have all of these different media outlets reach out to you and want to talk and want to do this and want to do that. Our affiliation with Southern Miss, the fact that we were student driven, and the fact that a lot of our students are from this area. We have staff members who are from this area. I think that resonated, and we appreciate he and his family taking that chance to speak with us, because I know that probably made them a little nervous too. We've never heard of the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center. Why would we want to talk to them? I think that we built a relationship of trust with that family. I think the work that we did showed them that we are not only journalists that can be trusted, but this industry can be trusted with their stories. And I think, we earned respect that day within George County, but then also around Southeast Mississippi.
For sure. And you talked about a national story, that there's a sense of professionalism and there's a sense of accountability that requires. How does the center balance student learning with the real world community journalism that we do?
Ooh, that's another. Look at you, Halawi, with all these good questions.
Thank you.
It's not easy. And I will say that is, going back to really one of the other questions that you asked about, the intentionality and our goals when we first launched. I will say that that was one of the things that we really thought about was when it comes to students, how can we really train them to be professionals when they are still in a student learning environment? We knew that breaking news was not going to be the same thing for us that it is for legacy TV stations, for legacy print organizations, for digital media organizations, because we have to consider safety. Not that they don't consider safety, but we have to consider safety with our students. We have to consider transportation. We have to consider the fact that as of right now, we're not a 24/7 operation. So there were a lot of things that had to go into that. We also had to think about just work-life balance for the students. Our students working 20 hours a week, not 40 hours a week. So you have to be able to go and get your education. You need to be in your classes. We can't take you from your classes and have you covering stories to where you're now falling behind in your classes. Some of our students work at the center and then they also have other jobs. We have to be considerate and respectful of that. At the same time, the only way that you learn how to work in this business is to get your hands dirty in this business. You can learn a lot in the classroom, and that's not a knock to any of the learning that happens in the classroom. But in order to really understand what you're learning in the classroom, you need to be able to do it. In order to understand how to build a relationship with someone you're trying to interview, you have to actually talk to them. You need to be down in that community, right? And so it's been a balancing act, and I would be lying if I said we had it totally figured out. Communication is really key. We do a lot of communicating with the students as to what their schedules are, letting them know, hey, you need to be at this place at this time. You need to work ahead. There are going to be some times maybe you're writing on the weekends. There are going to be some times maybe that you're having to record at odd hours in order to be able to get the work done, because the work still has to get done. But we also know that there are going to be times where, okay, it's exam time. You need to take your exams and you need to be able to have time to study for your exams. So we may have to adjust what our expectations are in order to make sure that you're getting the best of your classroom education and then the education we're providing to you in the center.
Again, beautifully said. I think you have done a great job at telling us not only what the vision of the center is, but why we do what we do and how important it is to the students just as much as it is to the audience that receives the news that we put out. Last question. I know we're having a great conversation.
Yeah, we can talk all day.
But looking ahead, just wanted to ask you kind of what priorities are shaping year 2.
Sure. So a lot of year 2 is focused on increasing the amount of quality content that we're doing more work in creating a pipeline between high school students in community college, coming within the university system, working with us, and then being able to get jobs once they are graduating, or even maybe before they are graduating, and getting them into newsrooms in Mississippi. We have created the foundation of that pipeline. For us, one of the big focuses in year 2 is recruiting outside of just Southern Miss. We are based at USM, which we are very thankful for, but we are not solely just for USM students. We have high school students that work with us. We have community college students that work with us. We want students who are at Alcorn State. We want students who go to Ole Miss. We want students who are at the W. We want students at Delta State. We want students from Mississippi Valley State. We want students who are interested in journalism, interested in communications, interested in web development within a journalism environment. We want students who are interested in pursuing a media career to look us up. We have internships in the summer. We have internships in the fall and the spring too, but we have internships in the summer. We have 3 different bureaus that we work out of. So let's say Hattiesburg is too far away. We have a bureau that's on our Gulf Park campus in Long Beach. We have a bureau that's based out of Mississippi Public Broadcasting in Jackson. There are opportunities and options. Reach out to us, talk to us, let us know what your story and your situation are, and how we can figure something out so that you can get this experience. You know, one of the things that I have heard from a lot of journalists, and I've said it myself, is I really wish a center like this had been in existence when I was in school. I wish that there had been an investment in growing journalists, in growing media professionals like this. This is an opportunity to be able to take your skill set to the next level so that when you are sitting in the classroom and you're learning some of these concepts, it makes more sense. And you're able to say, oh, I get that because I've done that. So I get that. And we want other students to be able to experience that too. And then the last thing I will say is that, you know, we also want to continue to grow our media literacy program. Right now, what is true, we've had, I think I mentioned earlier, in 2025, we had 30 fact checks, which I'm very, very proud of because it means that that was 30 times within that year that there was some kind of misinformation or disinformation that was on the internet or that was being discussed, most of that about Southeast Mississippi, that we were able to say, hey, wait a minute, do some checking on this. We did some research. Here's really what this is.
And some of those were people that came to us.
Yeah, some of those were people who reached out to us, and we want to make that process easier for people to be able to reach out to us. So we're looking into what a text-based hotline looks like. Right now, we have the ability for people who have a question about mis or disinformation. They can call us. They can send us an email. They can go to the form on our website, rhcjcnews.com, and be able to pull up the form and send us information. But we all live and die by our smartphones these days, right? So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to connect with us. And if they see something that they don't know if they can trust, to let us know, let us do the hard work for you in finding out whether it's true, whether it's false, whether it's misleading, or maybe it's unsubstantiated. Let us do that and be able to get back to you about here's what we found and inform other people who may have that same question about what you saw.
I think there are a lot of things to look forward to. Looking ahead of this year. Thank you again for taking the time out to sit with me.
Absolutely. And
here's to an amazing anniversary week. I can't wait to see the hard work that you and my other amazing bosses have put in come to fruition.
It'll be wonderful, and it's not about us, it's about you all, it's about the students. And so here's to a successful 2026 for Roy Howard Community Journalism Center.
Thank you. Joining us now is Abria Turner. She's the longest standing student worker at the center and currently serves as the engagement team lead. Abria, you've seen this newsroom grow from the beginning.
I started here at the center September of 2024. I was the first student worker, and when I came in, we only had one desk in the room. Eventually, we got a second one, and there were about 5 chairs in there. So I actually shared a desk with our director for like the first week of me being there, and I just remember being so excited to see literally how we progressed from not having furniture to getting the cubicles to there just being me to other students coming in each semester, being able to meet new people and see them grow in their skills as well. Like it's just been such a joy to see how things have changed and how we've grown over the past year and a half.
And I know you said you were sharing a desk with the director, so kind of growing together with your bosses. Mm-hmm. How was that attitude like from Nichole and from Whitney in those beginning days?
Well, our newsroom has always been a collaborative space. So it's not just the students working with one another, but we get to work with our managers and our supervisors. And that's what really makes it a positive work environment and gives us the opportunity to grow through mentorship. I know we've incorporated so many other things for us to meet professionals, but it starts in the workplace itself. It starts with having good relationships with our supervisors, for them to teach us new skills, for them to be able to show us, hey, this is how you do this. Oh, I want you to try this skill today. That exposure happens in the office before we go anywhere in the community.
That was beautifully said. And how has your role evolved from your first semester to now being the engagement team lead?
Yeah, so my entire first year working here, I was the administrative assistant. So within our office, I was helping out all of our full-time staff with whatever they needed us to do. I helped with creating flyers. I inputted data into our spreadsheets to keep up with our contacts. I made sure we got onto everybody's email list, as many as we could, rather, different state departments and city departments. We reached out to them and established those connections. And I also actually helped Dr. Ed Simpson with getting our dual enrollment program set up. So we partner with local high schools and community colleges to offer a community journalism class so that they can be exposed to that and hopefully one day come and work here at the center. But I help with that, and I just really enjoyed being admin assistant. But now I am the public affairs and events coordinator as well as the engagement team lead. And this really came from me expressing to them that I was ready to do something more. And that just goes back to show how our supervisors, they listen to us and they think about, okay, how is this role fitting in with their career path? And I advocated for myself as well, which I learned how to do here.
So I know you talked about your position now, kind of your two positions now that you juggle. What, looking at Abria, looking at yourself in the past year and more that you've been here, what skills did you gain in those initial months that help prepare you for your job duties today?
This is so funny. So the very first thing that I had to do was to record our voicemail for our office phone. That is a skill that we just don't think about. I think just with how technology has evolved, we've kind of forgotten about, certain things like that. So I literally remember writing out the script and I was practicing it, and I was too embarrassed to speak in the office because there was only 3 of us in there. So I practiced it outside and I came in, and then I had to record it on the phone. It's still the voicemail today. So if you call the RCJC phone, that's me.
Fun fact. Now we know.
But that's one skill, of course. I've actually learned how to use our video cameras. I've learned how to do photography. I've learned about designing flyers for print. There's just so many hard skills that I've learned, as well as soft skills with presenting yourself confidently, advocating for myself, learning to communicate with others, communicating with people who are the same age as me and being a leader to them, but also communicating with professionals, communicating with community members, and knowing how to approach each one of those interactions.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So looking at the word engagement, what does engagement mean in the context of the work that we do here?
Thinking of the word engagement, it all comes down to how we interact with our community. So internally, that's how we interact with one another. It's how we communicate as a team. When we have our team meetings, when we set our workflow, that has to be in order for anything that we do externally to run smoothly. But we, on the engagement team, primarily do focus on our social media outlets. So after the stories are posted, on our website, once the stories have been made packages, they're in video format, we take that even further to put it on social media. And so then we have to think about, okay, who is our target audience? Where are they right now? Where do they get their news? Where do they get their information? How can this be creative to target not just a younger audience, but also an older audience? What is working? And we have to track that engagement. And so it's all about, how do we engage with our community? And in my role as the public affairs and events coordinator, as well as with our reporters, because they come into contact with people on a regular, but we get out into the community to also promote RCJC and everything that we do to continue to engage real people in real time.
Really amazing that you mentioned how important it is. The content that we put out is just as important as how we amplify it. And in turn, we are making more content out of the content that we put out originally, and that's what collaboration is about, like you mentioned earlier as well. Lastly, I want to end off with this question: how has working at the center changed your understanding of journalism's role in a community?
I didn't grow up watching the news, and I'm actually majoring in communication studies. And every time that I told someone I was majoring in communication, they thought that I wanted to go into journalism. They thought that I wanted to go into the news. And that was not the case. And even when I started here at the center, I felt like I didn't fit in because I didn't have an interest in journalism. But I was willing to be in this space. And so I've really seen in real time and just have developed an appreciation for the reporters and the news anchors and everyone that it takes to produce stories, because we serve a community that's considered a news desert. They don't have people regularly reporting about what's going on around them. Really think about that. Like, how are they getting information? How do they know what's happening in their city? Do they know? And even when the city is sending out, information that they should be getting, are they really getting it? We're the ones tracking that. We're the ones having the conversation with the community members to get these stories that's happening in these rural areas out to other places, out to the rest of the state, outside of the state. Even one of our stories became national and international news, and that came from our reporters being out in the community. So journalism, it is impactful. And just with everything that's going on today in our nation, we see just how important journalism is for us to not just use our voices, but we're giving a voice to those who don't have a platform to speak.
Thank you, Abria, for that amazing answer, and thank you again for taking the time out to sit with me today. In addition to written reporting and engagement, here at the Center, we expand our visual storytelling through video production. Nick Sharma is one of the most experienced videographers on staff. His visual reporting helps bring unique aspects of local issues to life. Nick, thanks for joining us. So when you first began at the Center, what was the biggest learning curve in regard to the work that you do?
So I've always had a bit of a passion in videography. So I'd been working on a few short films and a bit of photography on my own personal camera that I had back home. But this was the first time that I was actually starting to develop web packages and video packages that were being used for professional use. So that was a pretty big jump that I made. And in the beginning, I guess it did take a bit of time to get accustomed to all those professional standards in terms of cutting the B-roll, how to use the interview sound bites and all that. So basically transitioning from making casual hobby short films and photography to working in a professional newsroom where your content goes out to multiple media stations over the state and out of the state and is being used for the center itself as well. I think that was the biggest learning curve, basically.
I mean, that you said that perfectly. And you talked about creating short form content, and that requires its own skill set.
Yeah.
How would you say your skill set has evolved over your time with the Center?
I would say my skill set has got a lot better over the 1 year that I've worked with the Center now. The biggest improvement I've seen, I would say, is in my videography and editing skills. Now, before, when I worked on the short films and the small packages that I used to do on my own, I wasn't using Adobe Premiere Pro or the Adobe Suite at all. I was using much smaller, small-scale applications that weren't as advanced. Whereas now I'm using much more complex tools and utilities to make those packages. And also, I would say my camera work has gotten a lot more better. Now, it's not as simple as just you get a close shot, you get a wide shot or a medium shot. You gotta match up all the angles as per your character, as per the scene for the B-roll that you're clicking. And I'd say my knowledge and perspective of what kind of shot I need to get, how do I need to position this shot, how do I need to zoom in as much or zoom out. I'd say my knowledge in terms of that has gotten a lot more better. And since I go to interviews a lot more now, because since becoming the videographer, I travel with the reporters all the time to get interviews. I'd say my public speaking's got a lot more better. Not that it was non-existent in the beginning, but I'd say it wasn't necessarily something I pushed myself for, although I was comfortable with it. But now I have no hesitation, just speaking up to someone, just going up to someone and asking questions and such.
And that's a big part of what we do at the Center. We collaborate, so we use our skills to help other people, and they do the same. And I wanted to touch on, you said you know how to control the camera and how to edit better for the purpose of the center. I think there's also a sense of consistency in that, you know? You're doing this every week, and not only are you gaining more practice, but it's more professional each time that you do it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you just look at my video packages from, say, when I was starting out, if you just go look at my profile at RSCJC, the way my editing has gotten better, the way my use of the B-roll has gotten better, I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it shows through
Yeah.
your work. Lastly, Nick, I know you're a computer science major, and you know that differs from the many majors that we have here in the School of Media and Communications. How would you say the work that you do here, covering real community issues, how would you say that has influenced you or helped your growth?
That's a great question, actually. I'd say since I'm not originally from Mississippi, I'm from Nepal, and I've lived here for like almost 2.5 years now. And working at the center and working as a videographer specifically, I think it's really helped me get to know Mississippi as a whole, especially the 10 counties that we cover, but Mississippi as a whole too, because it's made me go in depth about the community issues that lie in each state. In the beginning, before I worked at the center, I was indifferent to those situations because I was more focused on me, my immediate surroundings and such. But as I started working in the center, I guess it put a kind of a light on all the small or big issues that were in the communities around Mississippi. And I think it made me a bit more socially aware about such situations and being one of the voices that has been helping to get those problems of the people in the public eye and helping them resolve it's been really fulfilling, I'd say.
And I know you said you're from Nepal, so you're from a different community, but in your time here, would you say that the journalism that we do in the communities that we cover is important, and why would you say it is?
I'd definitely say it's important because Nepal, where I come from, it's also like a good portion of Nepal is in a rural places. And although I came from the capital and I always knew basically what was the ins and outs of the capital, I wouldn't say I was that accustomed to what was happening in the rural places as much. If there were big stories, like sure, I'd hear of it, but like the smaller ones, the smaller issues that the community people would face, I never heard of it. And I think that's like an issue in rural places all over the world. So I definitely say that community journalism is a good step to help not only the people get their issues to the public eye, but also help the news corporations that actually want to cover those zones, but they can't because they don't have enough resources to send people out there and actually cover it for them. So by basically having journalism centers like ours all over the country, I'd say it would be a great way for such news corporations to partner with us and then make sure that they can get news content from the rural areas as well and broadcast them.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a chain reaction because the bigger news corporations, they have the resources that maybe we don't have, but we are in the communities that maybe they don't reach. So it could be a chain reaction for sure. I want to thank you again for taking the time out to sit with me, Nick, and here's to an amazing anniversary week.
Thank you for having me.
This episode was inspired by the Center's 1-year anniversary, as well as our article, 1 Year of Reporting What Matters. You can read the full article and further dig into our coverage at r8cjcnews.com. We'd like to thank our director, Nichole Cyprian, engagement team lead, Maria Turner, and senior videographer, Nick Sharma, for sharing their experiences. Be sure to follow us on social media at r8cjc news to keep up with stories from across our 10-county region. As always, thank you for listening and for spending time with us as we take you behind the scenes of the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center. I'm Halawi Tabebe, and this is Matter of Fact.